Hello guys, welcome back to Lexalexus. We're going to be carrying on with our score predictions. We made it to week 37. We are now approaching the final 10 games for each championship side, which is really exciting for me. Got 12 games to predict. I'm going to give you my reaction for week 36 and also give you my predictions for the upcoming games taking place tomorrow and Wednesday. And I tell you what, we've got lots to discuss today and lots of twists and turns in the top and the bottom part of the championship. As always guys, same procedures. If you leave your score predictions in the comments, you guys can have a chance to score some points on the Lexalexus Football Prediction League. An update will certainly be appearing during the international break since I've made a good amount of progress and I'm currently halfway through week 32, so I think we are going to get an update for the prediction league by the time we see the international break next week. If you guys like what you see, please smash the like button. It really does help the growth of this channel. 50 likes will be absolutely appreciated. Please do hit the subscribe button too. It really does help the growth of this channel as we try and get to 3,000 subscribers. We're getting ever closer to that goal. And please also share the channel too, because all three of these things are free to do and they really do help. Without any further ado, let's start predicting week 37 in the championship. We kick off week 37 with Burnley going up against West Brom. Two teams in the playoffs going up against each other in this game here, and both with a win last weekend. So Burnley beat their fellow relegation from the Premier League team in Luton Town. They beat them by 4-0. It was a very comprehensive win in the end. Of course, Luton were down to 10 men really early on in that game, but Burnley, slowly but surely, were growing into the game and were very patient, and they did manage to get a really good and convincing result as well. A good confidence boost for them, I say. To beat Luton 8-1 on aggregate, I don't think they would have expected to do that this season. West Brom were involved in a very gritty win over QPR with a 1-0 victory despite going down to 10 men at the end of the first half. And despite QPR pushing at the occasion, West Brom held on, and they are showing that they've got some great resilience at home. Away from home, that's not quite the case, and Burnley are now starting to be more consistent at home after winning 4 consecutive home games. So we're now seeing a lot more points at Turf Moor, where at the start of the season we were thinking that they were a little bit inconsistent, Burnley, in terms of their home form. As a prediction here, this is so tough to call, because I do think Burnley are the favourites. But with how West Brom set up, I would not be surprised if they set up for a draw and they get it done successfully. I just have a very nagging feeling that this one's going to be a 0-0 draw. I've not predicted a 0-0 draw in a while. I think most people will be predicting Burnley to win, and I don't blame those people because of how they've been scoring their forms. But it has been a little while since they have had a 0-0 draw, and sometimes we do see a spell where Burnley go on a good run and then that's halted by one game where they just can't hit through a barn door, and I think that might be one of those games there. But I wouldn't be surprised if wrong, and there'll be very interesting implications in the promotion race if that result does indeed happen. Next up, we see Cardiff going up against Luton Town. I spoke about Luton already with Burnley. I mean, they've not got the worst away form in the league because they did actually manage to win one of their away games, but they have by far lost the most away games of all the championship sides this season, with 15 defeats away from home, with only 5 points being picked up, which actually is only 3 of those games. So to lose 15 out of 18, that is 5/6 of your games to lose on the road. That is by far the highest percentage of losses to the amount of away games being played for any side in the championship. And it doesn't bode well, since Luton really need the points. But they'd be eyeing up Cardiff, because Cardiff are the one team above the bottom 3, sitting in 21st with 36 points. It's another defeat for Cardiff, but I actually think they performed very well against Sunderland despite the scoreline. They have had a tough couple of games to have Burnley followed by Sunderland, and actually to only lose by 2-1 in both games and actually be competitive in both those games. I think Cardiff can take a lot of positives in that, and I think now that Cardiff have a winnable game here, it really gives them a good opportunity to really put pressure on the bottom three to really start performing. And Cardiff can actually see themselves going 8 points clear of Luton if they win this game. As a prediction, I have a bit more confidence with Cardiff's form. And with Luton losing 15 out of 18 away games, I think the safest bet for me is to predict a Luton defeat, unfortunately. I'm going to go for a 2-1 victory to Cardiff, and that will certainly ease their relegation concerns. Next is Derby and Coventry. I think this one's going to be a good game. It's obviously Frank Lampard going up against his former managed club in Derby County. This is going to be a very interesting reunion for Frank Lampard. Derby picked up not only their first goals from open play in over 900 minutes of football, but it's their first win under John Eustace. And who else could they have got their first win against John Eustace's former employers, Blackburn Rovers? You know, the housery we got in terms of that game was off the scale and unbelievable for Derby. And it's a crucial win because had they not picked up 3 points there, they would have looked a little bit cut adrift already from the relegation picture. And it gives them potentially a platform for Derby to build upon to see if they can get some form that can take them away from the relegation zone. And certainly with the gap only being 4 points between them and Cardiff, it is certainly not impossible for that to be the case. But they're facing the informed side in the Championship, Coventry City, who just seem to be on a roll. It's 9 wins out of their last 10 games. It is very difficult to stop this Coventry side in the moment. And we thought Stoke might have been a step too far for Coventry to continue their form. But Bobby Thomas, which I swear this is actually not the first time we've seen a last-minute goal from Bobby Thomas. I think he did the same thing against QPR not too long ago. And he's done it again here against Stoke City. A 3-2 win for Coventry, where it was a very highly controversial game with decisions going against both teams. But in the end, it was Coventry that managed to get the favours and got 3 points as a result. I think this game's actually going to be a tough one. I do think that result against Blackburn, you cannot underestimate how big that result can be for Derby going forward. And I do think it will make things difficult for Coventry. But having said that, because of their form, I think it is going to be very difficult and it will take something special to stop this Coventry side. I'm going to go for a 2-1 away victory to Coventry. I think they might have a slight edge in this, but I would not be surprised if Derby cause some problems. And actually, I think they can make it in the score sheet again. I think they will start scoring a little bit more consistently now from there on into the end of the season. But let me know what you think in the comments down below. Now to the two teams who arguably disappointed me the most out of all the sides in the Championship. It was Middlesbrough going up against QPR. Middlesbrough were involved in a 1-0 defeat against Swansea. I'm not going to take anything away from Swansea because Swansea approached that game perfectly. They absolutely got the worst out of Middlesbrough, but they got the best version of themselves. And actually, I think they could have scored more goals than the one that they actually did score in the end. It was a very poor performance from Middlesbrough's part, definitely below par for what I've seen of them. QPR themselves were involved in a 1-0 defeat also against West Brom, but the significance of that defeat is that QPR had a numerical advantage for the majority of that game and they could not take advantage of it. And to highlight how poor QPR have actually been on the road recently, it is 4 consecutive away defeats for QPR. So clearly this is the area of their inconsistency, which is why they cannot seem to push higher than 14th at this moment of time, despite having some good moments in this season. As a prediction, I think that away form for QPR is really a cause of concern, and I could see Middlesbrough bouncing back here with the nature of the inconsistency of the forms in these sides in that part of the table. I'm going to go for a 1-0 victory to Middlesbrough, and that will likely bring them to a full sense of security that they could try and get back into the playoffs. But ultimately, it's now going to be a question of mentality to see if Middlesbrough can carry that form forwards and can start really cranking up the pressure to try and get into the top 6. Next is Norwich and Sheffield Wednesday. Norwich were involved in a pretty frustrating draw for them against Oxford. They certainly had a very privileged position in that game, but did let the game slip from their fingertips and they just could not muster enough chances, or at least weren't clinical enough to have the chances that they had to try and kill the game off from Oxford. It ended up as a draw, which I did felt they were quite disappointed with as a whole. Sheffield Wednesday certainly were not disappointed. Their form has been relatively slow in the past couple of games, although I did mention in the last video they have played all the sides currently in the playoffs, so their form has really been competitive because the sides above them are incredibly talented. But they managed to get a win against Plymouth, a 3-0 win in the end, and certainly made light work considering home park has really proven to be a very difficult place for teams to go to. This game for me, I think it's going to be very interesting. Norwich, I think, are slightly better at home, but Sheffield Wednesday have proven that they are so much better away from home. They've actually got the second worst home form in the league. So they'll be pleased that they've actually got an away game here. Sheffield Wednesday, honestly, they've picked up a majority of their points on the road. This, I think, will be a draw. I cannot seem to decide between them. I've got pros and cons for both of these sides going into this game. I'll compromise therefore with a 1-1 draw, but honestly, if either one of them picks up a narrow win, it wouldn't surprise me. I think this game is actually really a tight one to call. Let me know what you think though in the comments. Next is Sunderland going up against Preston. So different results for both sides. Sunderland were involved in a win against Cardiff, a 2-1 victory in the end, and I did think when they did get ahead, I do think for the first part of the portion of the game, I thought they were really good and actually were scoring Cardiff quite significantly. But Cardiff, for large spells of that game, actually really gave something to think about. And I think they certainly would have taken the win based on how they did perform and potentially how below par they did perform in that game. But at this point of the season, for the fact that Sunderland are really still trying to win a losing race, against the top three currently in the championship, all they can do now is win those games and hope that any of the sides slip up. Who knows, maybe that defeat for Leeds, could really give Sunderland a good boost to try and close the gap on them. With Preston, they were involved in a narrow 1-0 defeat against Sheffield United. Sunderland would have really hoped that Preston got a result, and they'd really appreciate for Preston not to get a result against them, and because it will favour Sheffield United, who very recently lost to, and the other sides around in the top part of the table. It was Tyrese Campbell that scored the only goal for Sheffield United in the end. That was wildly competitive. I think Preston hit the woodwork at one stage, so Preston certainly were no mugs in that one. And I think they'll be the same here. I think Preston certainly will approach this one to be very difficult to break down, and Sunderland will just have to be very patient in the way that they play. As a prediction, I think I'm going to go for a 2-1 victory to Sunderland. I think it's going to be a very similar story to the last couple of home games that we've seen from Sunderland as of late. Mayenda, I think if he is involved, I think he will be significant. He's proving to have some really good confidence with goals at the moment. I think the quality going forward for Sunderland is what's going to edge it for me. But honestly, Preston could easily get a result too. Next up, we've got Sheffield United going up against Bristol City. I just mentioned about Sheffield United picking up that 1-0 win over Preston, and they will certainly be the side happiest out of all the results, because now they're joint top with Leeds United with the same amount of points, and without that points deduction, Sheffield United would actually be top of the league. And I've not mentioned this a lot, but we've not spoken about the impact that that 2-point deduction could have on Sheffield United, considering the very small gap between them, Leeds and Burnley. That points deduction, as small as it is, could actually have a big impact at the end of the season if Sheffield United don't end up going up in the end. Bristol City were involved in a 1-1 draw against Hull. They also had a numerical advantage for most of that game, but again, likewise with QPR against West Brom, they could not take advantage of it fully. They did get the equaliser from having a numerical advantage, but they couldn't go on to find the winner in the end. But I think they'd take a draw. It means that with the sides around them, that they have managed to get the better of the likes of Blackburn, who obviously didn't pick up a single point in that weekend, but they certainly would have preferred all three and certainly had the opportunity missed to do that. As a prediction here, personally, I think it's going to be a bit similar to the reverse fixture where it was very close. Bristol City actually made a really tough game for Sheffield United last time around, but I'm going to go for a 1-0 victory to the Blades. I think it's going to be very cagey, and I think very similar to the last game for Sheffield United, a moment of quality I think could breach that back line. But honestly, I would not be surprised if Bristol City also get a result too. Next is Hull and Oxford. This might be a very crucial game for both of these sides. They're both directly next to each other on the table. Hull find themselves 2 points behind Oxford, but Hull with a win, if we do the maths, can actually overtake Oxford if they do get a result. However, Hull have got the worst home form in the league. They do. They by far have got the worst home form in the league. And in their last home game, they actually beat Plymouth. So that home form that they would have previously had was actually worse off before last week when they managed to get 3 points against Plymouth. Oxford are finding themselves in a bit of a difficult patch of form at the moment, but they are still picking up the odd point when they can. And because of that, it is still making sure that their points tally is ticking along. And the fact that they are already at the very high 30s, I think does give them a good opportunity that they will escape relegation with a couple of good results here. As a prediction, I think this will be a draw. I'm not backing Hull. I'm not too confident with their home form. Maybe their win against Plymouth could give them the encouragement to beat Oxford here, but personally for me, I think Oxford are too strong. I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw, therefore, in this game. I think both sides struggling for consistent form, and therefore this will end as a draw. Next is Leeds going up against Millwall. Very different results for both sides going into this game. Leeds, of course, I watched yesterday. They got beaten by Portsmouth by 1-0. They certainly should have scored at least one goal. Joel Pirro had 2 criminal misses in that game. And Schmidt in goal for Portsmouth made up to 3 wonderful saves, which kept the scoreline down. He was a hero for Portsmouth in that game there. But Leeds will be kicking themselves that they did not get at least a draw in that game. Millwall are being an outside team to look out for, to look for the playoffs potentially. I still think they're going to need a lot of consistency to potentially get there, but they are still knocking around in the top half of the table and are not giving up hope just yet. It's a really good win for them against Watford. I think they'll certainly carry that confidence in this game, but as a prediction, Ellen Road for me, I think is going to be a very difficult place for teams to get a result. I know West Brom did quite recently. I think I'm going to go for a 1-0 win to Leeds. I think it'll be very nervy, and I think certainly with the fact that they've not won in 2, I think the pressure is now going to be ramping up for that Leeds squad, but they know for a fact that they need to be winning this game if they want to keep up the pressure on Sheffield United and Burnley, who chase them down currently. But for me, I think with the resources in the squad, I think they'll do just about enough to get the win. Next is Portsmouth going up against Plymouth. Now, I know Plymouth actually got a good result against Portsmouth in the reverse fixture. It was a very crucial win for Argyle at that time, and they really are desperate for 3 points at the moment. They certainly did not cover themselves in glory losing in the way that they did against Sheffield Wednesday at home by 3-0. I just gave my praises to Portsmouth. They were absolutely brilliant against Leeds to get the win there. Colby Bishop with a goal, but a big shout out goes to their goalkeeper Schmidt and also Connor Ogleve, who gave a really good individual performance as defender, but also actually offered a lot going forward and provided the assist of that goal as well. So honestly, really good performance from Portsmouth. It was night and day from what I saw from them against Sunderland to when I saw them against Leeds United. And I do think here with their home form, they are proving to be dangerous. They are actually in the top 10 in the Championship in terms of the most points picked up at home. And Plymouth are in the bottom 2 in terms of points being picked up away from home. For me, it's a win for Portsmouth. For me, I'm going to go for a 3-0 victory to Portsmouth. Maybe that's even me being a bit generous, to be honest, because Plymouth are leaking lots of goals at the moment, and it's going to take a lot for Plymouth to survive for me at this rate. Next game is Watford and Swansea, and I can't lie, I think this game's actually proving to be the most difficult for me to predict, because I'm a little bit uncertain where I stand on these teams in the moment. Watford being very inconsistent at this moment of time. It's another home defeat for them against Millwall after looking like that they turned a corner of their form quite recently. That's then followed with that defeat, and it's just been the story of Watford's season, especially in the second half. They were very consistent at the start, then they had a good amount of players out, and they've just not had that same momentum since then. Swansea have done really well actually since parting way with Luke Williams. They've managed to not only really improve their defence, it's another clean sheet for them, but they are starting to accrue more points. They are certainly looking very safe from relegation at the moment. I really don't think you should consider Swansea to be a relegated threatened side now. It's just going to be a question to see, can they push themselves up the table come from now to the end of the season? Because there's still 30 points up for grabs for all of these sides. For me, I think with how the teams are looking, I think Swansea are the favourites going into this one personally, but I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw. I'm quite undecided where I stand on how each side is going to approach this game. I'm going to therefore compromise on a draw, but let me know what you think in the comments down below. I think this, for me, this is the toughest game to call. And the last game to predict is Stoke and Blackburn. Now this, to me, is Groundhog Day for Blackburn Rovers' playoff chances. It was a terrible defeat against Derby. There's no mincing my words there. They certainly should not have lost the game in the way that they did. They got that 1 goal back before half-time and really could have used the second half to sustain some pressure. It's a very poor defeat for Blackburn and certainly has outlined the issues that Ishmael is currently needing to reinforce in that Blackburn side. They are only a couple of points off the playoffs, and that is why I do think for me it's Groundhog Day. If they do not pick up a result in this game, I think teams around them are going to start winning, and then the gap is really going to start forming again, and I think it's going to be very difficult for Blackburn to then recover and get back into those positions where they have been for a good portion of the season. Stoke, they themselves were involved in a mad game against Coventry. Many controversial decisions in that one there, but hopefully they could put that defeat behind them and they can really look at the positives, because there were plenty of positives for Stoke in that game. And I do think if they can get a good result here, I think it does give them a good amount of breathing space from the bottom three. They are currently in around the same position as Cardiff on 36 points, so they really need to be gaining this win to start forming an 8-point gap from the bottom three and to start accruing that pressure. As a prediction, I'm going to go for actually a 1-0 win to Stoke. This again could really go either way. We've seen Blackburn before respond really well to when they have a bad game previously, but with a different manager at the helm, I think we are going to get a little bit of a rough period before things start getting right. It is, it's still winless for Valérien Ismaël as Blackburn boss, and I do think with Mark Robins, I think performances have been improving at Stoke, but they've just not been necessarily getting the results they deserve. I think this time they will. Let me know what you think though in the comments. There you have it, guys. That is my score predictions for week 37. As always, guys, make sure you predict your week 37 score predictions too in the comments down below to enter your chances of scoring more points at the Lexalexus Football Prediction League. And I'd also like to see you comment your thoughts in the championship currently in the comments down below. I will offer my thoughts come the international break on what I think about promotion, relegation, and the playoff race, so stay tuned for those recaps. So that will wrap it up for today. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please smash the like button if it really does help. Please do hit the subscribe button too, it really does help, and please also share the channel too, it really helps. Thank you guys as always so much for watching. You guys are legendary for starting this video, and as always, I'll see you guys soon. Take care everyone, and have a good midweek.